There's one thing that explains all of Republican politics, and it's not just Trump, it's not even just MAGA, it's contempt. There is nobody who thinks Americans, and especially Republican voters, are more stupid than Republican politicians. In this episode, I'll show you how Republican contempt explains the three biggest issues in American politics: the economy, immigration, and crime. Welcome to Left and Loose. I'm your host, Rich Kim. This is the weekly show where I pour a big glass of devil juice and I call out Republican bullshit. So, for this week, I thought it'd be helpful to just take a step back and look at the big picture of the news. You know, with the Trump administration, there's just so much nonsense that's coming to us every day. I think it's hard for people to see the big picture and see what this all means. That includes people in the media, in politics, or just more generally, which I completely get when every day basically feels like a political dumpster fire. Now, on this topic of Republican contempt, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to convince the MAGA Karens and Kyles in your life that they should look at this whole Republican MAGA thing differently. They're going to continue to insist that, oh, this is the greatest presidency ever, and greatest Congress ever, all of that. And they're just going to basically vomit out whatever is the current Fox News and Breitbart talking points. But basically, for everyone else, I think this idea of Republican contempt is a persuasive one that a lot of people will just get instinctually. So let's take a look at how that applies to like the three biggest issues that we have in politics. First, we'll talk about the economy. So Republicans came in saying, oh, we're the party of the middle class. That's how they've wanted to paint themselves in recent years. But of course, we all know the first thing that they did was Trump put out these tariffs, right? That has been affecting everybody. And it's just a long list of items that this applies to, whether it's coffee, meat, fruit, wine, which I will never forgive them for, which things like diapers or furniture or detergent or electronics or housing materials. Basically, just so much of our economy gets imported. And of course, if there's this amount that importers need to pay, businesses are not charities at the end of the day. They're going to end up passing this to consumer one way or the other. And it's really just a matter of time, whether they raise the actual prices on goods or whether they're just going to like take that same package and give you like a smaller amount for the same price that you're paying. Like in a bag of chips or whatever, where there's even more air in here. And, you know, so you're getting less product at the end of the day. And it's really like the middle class isn't dealing with enough already. I mean, it's just been so expensive when you're trying to do grocery shopping, when you're paying whatever it is for your housing costs, whether it's rent or whether you're actually lucky enough to afford a house, or even just like childcare, how much it costs for daycare or summer camps, or just raising a family in general. It's like the middle class is under assault from all of these economic forces. And your answer to that is basically to just raise people's prices for this promise that eventually all this manufacturing, all this business is going to come to the States, where it's like people are not seeing that in their everyday lives. People are not benefiting from any of this. They're actually just getting like paying more. They're just paying a tax, right? And as if this tariffs wasn't, that whole situation wasn't bad enough. It's like on top of that, Republicans are also going to pass this big, beautiful bill, or what we call around here the big billionaire blowjob. It's basically not doing anything to help people with their costs that they're actually facing. And beyond that, also cutting people's Medicaid, cutting people's food stamps, and raising people's health insurance costs. And that's the thing, like Republicans are counting on the fact that Americans aren't going to even do like basic math around this stuff. Like, even if, let's say, you're not affected, like you're lucky enough that you're not affected by these Medicaid costs, or you don't have to even Medicaid cuts, or you don't have to rely on food stamps. That's great. There's plenty of people who do, who fall on hard times and who need this sort of stuff because they are sick or whatever. Even then, when you're, for example, your healthcare costs are going up, like Republicans are saying, oh, people are just not going to do the math in their yearly budget to see, okay, the cost that I'm actually paying this year because of tariffs, because of my increased healthcare insurance costs, that people are just not going to realize that that math just doesn't add up. That literally there's been a substantial increase just because Republicans said so. And what was all of this really for at the end of the day? It's for the big blowjob. It's for having people like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, and Jeff Bezos, people who already have had like more money than God, have hundreds of billions of dollars more given to them courtesy of the US federal government. And it's like, what do these people even need this money for when that could be reinvested back into the middle class, when that could really help people when it comes to their costs, when it comes to their health care, when it comes to education. Basically, Republicans are just counting on people to just not realize that this whole middle class thing is complete bullshit. And second, this whole issue of immigration, right? Another thing that Republicans came in saying for this government was, oh, we want to get out the criminals, the violent criminals and the gangbangers. ICE is going to go out there and round them up and get rid of them, get them out of this country. To that, I'd say, go ahead. Yeah, but by all means. If there are people who are actual criminals and you prove that, you could show that there is a criminal history here because there needs to be some process around that, right? Then by all means, deport them, send them out. That's what ICE should be there for. But we know how this is actually working out, right? Not only are they, in these instances, not providing any proof of these people actually being violent criminals, but the vast majority of the people who are being rounded up by ICE are not the violent criminals. They're the landscapers, cooks, busboys, housekeepers, hotel workers, construction workers, farm workers. These are people who are working and trying to follow like the right path in the country, right? A lot of these people have immigration proceedings going on. The sickest thing about all of this is ICE, for example, waiting for immigrants outside of their of the courthouses, waiting for people who are showing up for their immigration proceedings. Like, these are people who are trying to follow the system, who are trying to do the right thing, and finding some path to citizenship, and ICE instead treating them like actual criminals and rounding them up and even sending, like, not only deporting them, but in some instances sending these people to like these horrible like torture prisons, both like domestically, whether it's this alligator Alcatraz bullshit or whatever these multiple places are called that are costing taxpayers billions of dollars, but also these like foreign torture prisons as well. And the story now is it's not about violent criminals anymore. Suddenly it's about just all illegal aliens in general, whether they have valid claims or not, and that these people are, quote unquote, poisoning the blood of the American people. Like, at some point, people are going to wake up and see that, okay, the story is really changing here, right? Like, You guys came in saying one thing that I think most of people could probably get on board with. And then the way you're actually implementing this policy is like masked agents showing up and disappearing, largely like hardworking, good people who've been here like for a long time and are looking to just like get through the system in a proper way. So at some point, the American people are just not going to believe this bullshit and are going to see through how this story has just continued to change the whole while. And finally, third, when it comes to crime, Republicans love to pretend that they're the party of law and order, despite all of the corruption and crime that is going on with their party, and in particular with the Trump organization as a whole. But that's another episode. And Republicans love to pretend that Democrats are like somehow the pro-crime party, that we just love crime being all around. And so their approach to that is to have these like National Guard and military deployments in largely blue cities. And when they're doing this, it's just like, I think it really just comes down to like the numbers at the end of the day. First, let's just say it. In city, whether it's DC or whether it's just cities in general, crime can be a real problem in a certain respect. That's absolutely true. In a lot of these cities, they have had like successful efforts to bring down crime by working with their local law enforcement over the years, right? Including DC, which has been at like a 30-year crime low. The deployment in DC has cost taxpayers a projected amount of like $1 million a day for all these National Guard to be there. Now, think about how much it costs for your average like police officer's salary in your area. For $1 million just for one day, think about how many police officers that could put on the street for a year. If you instead took that money to actually fund more of a police force, to actually fund the police, good and accountable police officers, which I think has been basically what the Democratic movement has been trying to aim for at the end of the day. Like, you're actually delivering a solution to the problem of crime. Like, if you really care about that, then this is a much more sustainable way to address that, right? Instead, what Republicans are doing are deploying these troops out on the streets, basically having like a TV show sort of like stunt, and planting the flag of like, oh, mission accomplished. Oh, okay, we're going to call it a victory and say that, oh yeah, now the crime problem is solved. Everyone knows what this actually looks like at the end of the day. Okay, maybe the National Guard did help for whatever time that they're going to be there. Even though, I mean, it has to be said, the National Guard themselves can't even like actually arrest people. Like, they can go to these areas, and if they see conduct that doesn't look right, they will call police officers to say, hey, come arrest this guy. And so, okay, but let's just say that they actually, do something to help crime here. This is a brief stunt that temporarily is doing something about crime in this area, and then of course when National Guard leaves, it's there's no sustainable solution to that, right? And I think that's the thing that Republicans are really counting on here as well, that they're counting on people are just not going to see through the smoke and mirrors, that people are just going to see through this bullshit, that people are not smart enough to realize that, like, hey, at the end of the day, you guys are just like posing for the cameras and putting on this big show to play to your MAGA base without actually doing things about issues that people really care about. And that's really like if you're taking a step back, my whole view on this thing, that, hey, we are smarter than that. That Republicans think that their voters, that just independents, that people who are kind of the swing voters are just so stupid that they're not going to realize that, like, on each of these issues, whether it's the economy, whether it's the immigration, or whether it's crime, frankly, they're fucking up. I don't know how else to put it. Like, the math ain't mathin' around a lot of this stuff when you look at actually how this is really playing out. And so when you're in conversations with people who can maybe be some are maybe be persuaded, can maybe see through some of this, I would just maybe put it like that, that honestly, Republicans are putting on this big show and actually making these problems worse instead of better, that are actually making people's lives worse across the board. Whether it's for the middle class, or whether it's to try to do something about immigration, or whether it's try to do something about crime, we are not going to fall for this bullshit, and we need to call it out every chance that we get. So, cheers to you guys, and I'll see you next week.